Okay, so now we just talked about that blended sequence. Now, you might be wondering, okay, how do I write all those things? You do that fancy timeline, and here's all your messages, but like that looks just totally intimidating. How am I going to write all those messages? Here's day 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7. Let's go 9, 12, 15, 19. Okay, how do I possibly write all that? You said to do it for like a year. If you do the math, you're doing it for a year, I think it's probably about 50 messages. No, it's going to be more than that. It's probably going to be about 70 messages or something like that. That's probably, I said I shouldn't do math here, but it's not that many messages. But no one does it for a year. We all talk about doing it for a year, but the reality is most people do it for like 2 days. The longest sequence I've ever done is about 6 or 7 months. But you should do a year. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, but how do you create this? And I'm going to tell you, I have this one thing, this one sequence called 6 in 7. And amazingly enough, it's at 6in7.com. And you're free to go there and opt in. It's sort of weird. I'm not going to try to. It's this weirdest sequence in the world because it doesn't pitch anything really. It just sort of talks about information marketing. It was the first stuff I ever published in the information marketing world. And I published that, I think it was in 2003. Haven't touched it in years. I haven't touched that puppy. I think for you really old people out there like me, do you remember there's this thing called Windows NT? It was an operating system. I think it was around somewhere around Windows 95 or Windows 98. They also came out with this thing called Windows NT, and I was like for some reason I had a Windows NT computer in my house, and it was just stupid, but I had it. And so when I was writing the sequence, I actually had this, it's important to write about yourself and about what's happening in your life. And so I had this massive crash, this computer crash, and it was Windows NT, and I had to rebuild this Windows NT computer. So I had this Windows NT computer, and this was 2003, so the Windows 10, I don't know, it was probably 3 years old, 2-year-old computer, whatever, and the thing crashed on me. And so in this sequence, I talked about that computer crashing. And then I never, so that was, I wrote that thing in probably March or April of 2003, never went back and touched it up because it's an autoresponder sequence, and once you program it in, it just keeps on going. So like somewhere, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, some guy writes to me, he's like, okay, Jeff, I can see that you wrote this a long time ago because like Windows NT is like so archaic, no one uses it anymore, right? Because I wrote these things, I never went back and rewrote them. So I think I did go, that was like the last time I touched this sequence was when I went in, a few years ago and edited and changed it from Windows NT to something else. And so that's just, the one thing you have to remember is when you're writing this stuff, you are creating an asset in your business. A sort of a sidebar is you probably want to try to make it as evergreen as possible. So you probably don't want to talk about holidays. You don't want to talk about Christmas. You don't want to talk about summer. You don't want to talk about kids going back to school because you don't know when people are going to get these things. And you certainly don't want to talk about like such and such president got elected or so-and-so won the Super Bowl because that stuff a few years from now is going to look pretty dated. So you try to keep this as evergreen as possible. Meaning you don't put in things that can date it. Because once you have this asset set up, it's a fantastic asset. So when I created this website, this will be instructive. This is, I decided it's time to start building a list in this internet marketing world. I think I might want to go into this internet marketing world, so I'm going to build a list. So I put up a one-page website. It's actually a two-page website. The one page was the squeeze page. The other page was the thank you page. That's all there was. So I put together a squeeze page and a thank you page. at 6 and 7. I actually did that squeeze page. It's a long form sales letter that tries to get people to opt in. And so that was really different back then. It's almost like a long sales letter to get the opt-in. No one was doing that back then. Then after I did it, some people started copying, other people started to do it. I really haven't gone back and tested that in a long time. So that might not be as effective as it used to be. This is just something I put those 2 squeeze pages. Squeeze page, thank you page. That's it. Then I started. I went to Aweber, which is what I was using then. Put together a list, put in the subscribe code, have the thank you page. It's all done. It took me, to write that copy for the squeeze page maybe took me a couple hours. But I mean, we're talking this entire site was set up in half a day maximum, and that's because I went with the long copy. So it's that simple. So then, and what did I do? I wrote the welcome message, and I wrote the first message. Okay? Then I sent it out to some friends and said, hey, look at my website, go opt in. And I started getting some opt-ins. And so then what I did was I wrote the second day. And then the next day I wrote the third day. And then the next day I wrote the thing that went on day 5. So basically, I didn't sit there and write all the messages ahead of time. I created the squeeze page, I created the thank you page. I put, I signed up, got the Aweber list going. I created these first 2 messages, the welcome message and the first day message, and that was it. And then I just stayed one day ahead of it, and each day I would publish it. I'd publish this one, then the next day I would publish this one, and then the next day I would schedule this one in. And then once we got out here, I had 3 or 4 days in between. And I think there's only about 9 messages in that whole sequence, 9, 10, maybe 11 messages. And that's it. I was done. I wrote those like more or less one a day for a few weeks, programmed them in, and have never touched the website since. So you do not have, this doesn't have to be a big deal. Put up your squeeze page, get your thank you page, all good to go, and then just start writing them. Write one a day for the next few weeks, and you're set. Now, that, since 2003, and this still to this day, brings in, I don't know, it can vary anywhere from 4 to 12 subscribers a day. I do nothing. I don't know how those people find me. I've never done anything to drive traffic to the site. Nothing. It's been out there for a long time. I suppose people might be searching in my name or something. But I've never done anything. I get those 4 to 12 subscribers a day. So what does that mean? That means I get 120 to 360 subscribers a month. I'd say on average we're probably talking about 200 subscribers a month. If I had to put a value on those subscribers, it would be, I would say at least, and I haven't tested this because this is just something I put up and I moved on. I never worried about it much. Maybe I should, but like my business has gotten to the point, it's so big that I can't be bothered with little things like this. But let's just say, at a minimum, those people are worth $10 each in the long run. And like I said, this sequence I've got, it does nothing to sell anything. It just gives them content. It gives content for 10 or 11 issues, and that's it. 10 or 11 issues. So let's just say it's 200 people a month at $10 a pop. I just got a note from my cameraman. He's doing math for me. That's very cool. So what he said, we'll get back to that. Let's just say that's $2,000 a month. Right? If we're at $10 a pop, if that's what they're worth, and trust me, they're worth more than that to me. That's $2,000 a month for something that I half a day to get the website put up. And, total time, let's just say I spend an hour on each one of those emails. 10 hours of email writing and a half a day of putting the website together. So we're talking, 12, 14 hours? Let's just call it 10 to 20 hours, somewhere in there. And I have an asset that's bringing in $2,000 a month. The reality is this number is quite a bit higher, and so it's really bringing me. And that's the. So my cameraman it was a good idea. Let's take that. That's $24,000 a year, and here we are years later, and it's still crank. It doesn't slow down. It keeps on doing that. It's pretty amazing. That's what we talk. I mean, that's why it just gets started. And really, the story behind that. Okay, why did I mean, people look at this sequence and they say like, because it really doesn't sell anything. It doesn't sell anything. How do I make that money? I make that money because eventually I send out those broadcasts. Remember that blended sequence, okay? So we've got the blending. The blended. So I'll do my broadcasts, and so here's the broadcasts that I'll write. They'll either promote a product of mine or one of my partners, and those broadcasts come in. I start sending them after after someone's 5 or 6 emails into my sequence, and I've created that bond. Then I'll start mailing them, and that's where this money comes from. And I can track it pretty easily, especially when I'm selling my product. I'll use my own affiliate link for this specific list, and then I can track exactly what it's doing. So that's why I know that I'm making more than $10 per subscriber on average. So getting back to why did I create this? People look at this, these 10 or 11 or 12 emails, and they're like, Jeff, what's the deal with that 60,000? It's pretty weird. You just send a bunch of content, then it just sort of peters out, and you don't send any more content. And if you do go subscribe, I will warn you that it's all going along real fine, and then I just sort of lost momentum. I stopped writing emails, and it happens, right? Okay. So anyways, why did I do that? I didn't have anything to sell back then, but I was looking at this internet marketing space, and this is very instructive. I was looking at internet marketing. Back then I was publishing about the stock market, but I thought, this internet marketing stuff, teaching about that is pretty cool. I've been doing it for 7 years or something, so I might actually want to get into that market and start teaching people about building their business online. It just seems like a cool thing. I might want to get into that. I went to an event. I met a bunch of people that some of the big name gurus that John Reese, Frank Kern, Jeff Johnson, all those guys. I met them at an event. These are pretty cool people. I want to hang out with them. How do I hang out with them? What happens if I want to go into this market? How do I get into this market? And I noticed one of the big things, entries into the market, was how the people promoted each other. So I'm like, okay, well, that'd be cool. I could probably get to know those guys better if I could promote for them. And also, obviously, I'm going to get into the market. I want a list. Okay, so how do I create a list? Well, I create a list just like I'm teaching you how to create a list. I put together a squeeze page, and I put together an autoresponder sequence. So before I had any intention, before I knew for sure I was going to get in the market, before I had anything to sell, I put together this list building process. And here we are years later. It's obviously worked out pretty well for me, right? If you look at it, this actually started in 2003. It was spring of 2003 when I put this website up. It wasn't until the fall, until October of 2005, that I actually came out with my first product in the internet marketing space. So we're talking 2.5 years from when I started building a list to when I actually released a product. Now, I'm not saying you should take 2.5 years to build a list, or you have to take 2.5 years before you try to monetize a list. What I'm saying is, the way I think, and obviously I've had some pretty good success, so I think this might be a way you will want to think, is the first thing you need to do is build a list. If you're thinking about going into a market, just start building a list. Just put up some basic content, put up a squeeze page, and start building that list. That should be the first thing. People always ask me, favorite question is, Jeff, if your business disappeared overnight, if you lost everything, how would you start over again? And all I would do is I would go identify the market I want to be in, or the markets I might want to be in, and I would put up a squeeze page and start driving traffic. And the beauty is nowadays there's a lot more ways to drive traffic than there was back in 2003. You didn't have YouTube or social media or so many other things. So that is, I'm just telling you, this is how I went after it. I was in one market, wanted to be in a different market. I put up squeeze page, started building a list. And I think that's what you should do. It's very, very easy to do. Like I said, I put, I don't know, 10, 12, 14, 20 hours into this thing, and I've got this asset that's, who knows if it will ever slow down, but it's making me a lot of money every single month, completely on autopilot. So get out there and do it now.